The worst thing to do is to become stagnant. And I think if you do have a slower December or a slower January, then that's the time when you're sharpening up on some other skill. Maybe you're reading a negotiation book. Maybe you're reading a sales book. Maybe you're attending a seminar. Maybe you're, really seeking out those masterminds, like you were saying, that are literally, you could go to one breakfast, lunch, and dinner almost every day here in Jacksonville. So find a few to go to.
Yeah, if you want a free lunch or breakfast, they're out there.
Every day.
Every day.
So, take time to do that right now. I think so. It's, staying top of mind, communicating with people, not becoming stagnant, getting out there and doing those trainings. And then I think number 3 is just staying positive. Just, again, just knowing that the business is going to come.
Something good will come out of this. Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. I have a December of extraordinary real estate agents booked up. Today's guest is a Florida State grad. She's licensed in both Florida and Georgia. In 2021, she sold 68 properties, which is an amazing number for an individual agent. She prides herself in her work ethic, communication skills, negotiating, and attention to detail. She is a problem solver who wants to help people live their best lives. Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That
part. Before I go on, because I generally get so involved in the show, I want to mention Remy Graphics. Everybody knows when they watch a show, Remy Graphics do these wonderful mugs, which you have a hot pink one in your bag there to take home today. But Remy Graphics, right up in Nassau County in Fernandina, they'll actually make one-off. So all laser engraved gifts. We just had the mug here, but she has hundreds of laser engraved gifts. So if you just want to make, for your closing or whatever, John and Sally, welcome to Jacksonville or whatever, boom, she'll pop those out. You don't have to order a whole dozen of them at a time. You just order 1 or 2 and she'll whip those right out for you. Remy Graphics, RemyGraphics.com. So Florida State. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little about what was your choice? Because you're licensed in Georgia, because I meant you came from Georgia.
No. So I'm a Jacksonville native.
Jacksonville native. Okay, give us the story.
Born and raised in Jacksonville. So not a lot of us actual, natives of Jacksonville. And went to Florida State. My mom went to LSU. My dad went to Florida. So I kind of split the difference. Loved Florida State. Had the best experience there. After Florida State, came back to Jacksonville. Lived here for a couple of years, got married, lived in Naples for a few years, lived in Orlando for a few years, and then my husband's job brought us up to Atlanta, and we were there for about
Were they all job moves? Naples, Orlando? Is that, yeah? Mm-hmm. What years were you in Naples? Okay.
2011.
Yeah. My wife and I met in 2004 in Naples. I was actually running, which is now the Verizon store, but the Alltel Wireless. Everyone knows Alltel Wireless here in Jacksonville. Alltel Wireless had a store right downtown Naples, and I was running that store, and that's where we met.
Oh, that's so fun.
In the early 2004, October 2004, if I recall correctly. Yeah. So what makes you choose Florida State? What did you go to Florida State for?
I went to Florida State for political science and communication. I always wanted to dive into politics, and being in Florida State, being in Tallahassee, we were able to do that. Decided after an internship that was not maybe the full path I wanted to go down.
The political part?
Yeah. And leaned in more towards the broadcast journalism side of things. I anchored the WFSU News while I was there. I did a lot within the communications world there. But one of the coolest things is we were there during 2000. I graduated in 2001. So we were there when the whole Bush...
Gore.
Yes, and everything hinged on Tallahassee. So it was really neat to be up there and covering all that. And, even though we were just this small little school show, we were able to be there with, all the Fox Newses and the CNNs and everyone else.
How big is that department? Well, you may not know, maybe it's bigger today, but when you were there, like how many students are involved in that course curriculum?
Well, it was very specific. The communication school in general is very large, but then to get into the broadcast school was, much, much smaller, and then even further to dive into the television side of things as opposed to written journalism. We probably had, maybe 100 people, but everyone who ran it came from a professional background. So, those showrunners and the executive producers and things like that all came from other news stations.
So as you went further along in the schooling, it got narrowed down, which it's pretty common everywhere. But what is the challenge for someone progressing, in college through those steps that you took? I mean, it's just, and I go back and I'm asking the question because when I first started, I was like, I'll be an engineer.
Yeah.
Well, when you had to take the chemistry and the calculus and all that all at the same time, as long as being a freshman at the Citadel, I was like out of it and jumped over to education, which is a little more my speed from an educational standpoint.
Yeah.
So there comes things that just attrition that happens. Is the course curriculum just get that much, or is there just that much more judgment on your performance ability? What is it in the school that weeds people out?
I think it's maturity. I think everyone goes in thinking, either they're unknown or they're adamant on this one thing. And then as you grow and you learn and you mature and you take different classes, I think that's when you're able to hone in and kind of dive into what interests you more. And especially, as you're a junior, senior, picking your major, getting involved in more classes that are a lot more hands-on. And again, that you're picking, I think that's when you're able to figure out what it is you want to do.
Right.
And then again, some people graduate and never do anything with it. So.
Well, probably that's probably 60-70% of the majors, right?
Yeah.
So you graduate and you do get into the business though of that. And that business is really, really tough. I mean, Heather Crawford and lives in the neighborhood, and we've had dinner with them and chatting about, you got to pay your dues in that, line of work. If you want to be that anchor on like she is now every night, if you want to be that person, you got to pay your dues. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was prepared to do that right out of college. I was selected. I was hosting a local television show here, which was so fun, just to go through that whole process and, be the one who got to do that. And then from there it pivoted and I was able to work in Central Florida at a small station as a news reporter. But then I had a tragedy in our family, and based on that tragedy, when I knew that all the local media stations would cover it, there's a saying in media that if it bleeds, it leads. And I'll never forget my very first story on camera. I was about a baby being found in a dumpster.
Oh, geez.
Which is terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. But I was so excited that I was actually had made it, that I was smiling. And I got home that day and my husband was like, Kate, you cannot smile. And I realized at that moment the disconnect between the words that were coming out and the actual people. And then when I actually had experienced it in my own life and had a tragedy where I knew all the news was covering it, that's when I said, this is not for me. I made a pivot in my career and decided to get into a career that actually helps people as opposed to exploiting people.
You mentioned that slightly, not all of that, in the pre-show, and my trigger was, obviously thinking of the media today. And I forget who I was listening to an interview, I don't think it was a week ago. Not that I haven't heard this before, but when the news went to 24/7, it put that attitude, that lack of morality on steroids,
Absolutely.
And, it was like they were over in Pennsylvania this morning on the news, and where they've supposedly have arrested this gentleman who supposedly killed the United Health CEO last week. And they were talking about how the hotel was all filled. And I was looking at the scene that she was sitting in. It was very rural Pennsylvania. So it's kind of like, Groundhog Day. Everybody's going to show up for that moment. And it's like, okay, they arrested a guy. Yeah, it's important that they arrested the guy, but why is every news media, got to be there and running people from all over to try to sensationalize this dude? We need to be doing, but the moral code, that's where that's what I thought when you were telling that story.
Yeah.
But you become a mom. So I think you said you were 13 years
Yes.
at home. So I guess this leads us up to 2018.
Yes.
Okay. What's going on in Kate's life that she decides she wants to get into real estate?
So my oldest was in 5th grade. My husband is in real estate. We met at Florida State.
Kale. I love that. Kate and Kale.
I know.
I was looking at that this morning when I was reading you guys' bio.
I know. And actually our middle initial's the same, so everything's the same.
It was just one letter.
I know. It's like a dash. No, so he's a broker in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. He does the land side of it. He does land mitigation. So anyway, I'd always kind of been in the real estate world, kind of adjacent because of him.
Right.
Growing up, my family moved a ton. Not for any reason. My parents just loved moving. And so we were constantly going to open houses when I was little. I would doodle floor plans in class when other kids were drawing cats. I just always loved it. I loved walking, if we had, we were in a neighborhood and they were building a house, I'd be the first person to kind of like walk through and see what was going on in the house. And so I was just always very attracted to real estate.
Right.
And I kind of felt like it was one of those things I knew I was going to do. I just didn't know when. So my oldest was in 5th grade and I just looked at my husband and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the course. Why not? Let's just see what happens. So I sign up and do nothing with it for 6 months. And I was in my last month before it expired. It was like September, I think. And I was like, all right, this is it. I mean, I have 1 month. I've already paid for it. Let's just do it.
Right.
So I dove in, did it, passed. And that was October of 2018. And then because, I had a friend who ran a real estate company, Red Barn Real Estate in Atlanta. And so I hung my license with her, not really knowing what I was going to do. I was like, okay,
Right.
I've got it. Now what? So 2019 rolls around and I was like, all right, let's dive in. Let's see what I can do. I had a few friends who wanted to buy a house. So I helped 3 of them. We sold our house. Around that same time, we also decided we were going to move back to Florida, which was always the goal when we were in Atlanta.
Right.
So we figured what perfect timing between 5th and 6th grade. Let's make the move back to Florida. So we moved back to Florida. We get here about July of 2019. And again, I'm like, okay, I honestly hated real estate. The people were awful. Every experience was terrible. I was like, okay, that was a fun few months. I'm done. I'm never doing that again. I'm going to go back to just being a stay-at-home mom and just chill. Not that stay-at-home moms don't do anything, but like not real estate.
Right.
So then that was the remainder of 2019. 2020 obviously rolls around. Everything is shut down. And we were living on Amelia Island at the time, which was a great place to be during, the world being shut down because we could walk and do so many different things. So there was a girlfriend of mine who I'd gotten to know, and she and I just would walk every single day, like miles. And she owned her own brokerage. And long story short, it's probably about May at this point. And she said, why don't you just hang your license with us, and then just see what happens. And at this point, I'm only licensed in Georgia. I'm not even licensed in Florida.
Right.
So I was like, all right, sure. So I hung my license with her, go to the first meeting. And there was another agent who needed an open house held in Camden County in Kingsland, Georgia. And I was like, well, sure, I'll do it. Why not? So that was right at the beginning of June of 2020. By July of 2020, I'd gotten my Florida license. By the end of that year, I sold almost $10 million in real estate in about 6 months. And I just figured if I'm going to do this, I'm going to dive in head first, and then I never looked back.
Okay, so let me see if I follow this here.
I know, it's kind of crazy.
You gave me a fire hose there.
Yeah.
What was some of the initial experiences where you were like, I don't like this?
Well, one of my friends, we looked at over 70 houses, and before they were able to make a decision.
So a friend ran you ragged.
And I was just like, what in the world? And then finally we found one, but still, it was like, okay. And then another one, I literally had to talk the guy off the ledge. Like I remember sitting in my closet, like talking him off the ledge multiple times. And I'm like, this is way too stressful yes, the commission is good, but like, is it really worth, being someone's counselor and I felt like I was so much more than just a real estate, in which now I've learned we are. But at that time, I did not have a mentor or anyone kind of being like, no, this is normal. So I was like, what is going on? At that point, I'd only seen kind of the glamour, fun side of real estate, not the grit like we were talking about, and just the behind the scenes that doesn't get shared a lot.
Right.
And so I experienced all that, I feel like, but I think that's what shaped me and helped me to be able to handle
100%. This is the type of conversation I'd like to have, because I know, there's only a small percentage, as of agents who truly make a solid living. And then, what was the number? 47% of the agents in the United States didn't even have a transaction last year. And we know, high percentage obviously fall out, don't even renew the first time. So we don't know when that happens. That might be in the first 3 months like you, and they're out. They're out of the business forever, when really it's a business that could change your life. Now, we know it's going to be very hard to take that small, 1% of the agents and make it 5% of the agents. That's probably not likely going to happen. But I think, obviously, I'd like to think the listeners to the podcast resonate with this story here. What you felt was somewhat kicked in the face. You didn't know better. Where I think if you, like you said, if you had a mentor saying, all right, this is how you handle your girlfriend. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You ran around 70 homes because you didn't know any better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it was cool because from that, and again, I didn't realize it at the time, but now one of the things that is so important to me are my systems. And I have a system for literally every single thing within my business. And that was born out of necessity, one, but also out of just being able to be efficient with my time and with my clients and with my transactions, so that we do get successfully from, looking at houses to actually closing.
let's dig into this systems
Okay.
thing. I think that's important because although not the saying that no one else I've had on has had a rough beginning, I think you clearly where you felt, because I think this happens to a lot of agents. They sign up with a brokerage and they didn't do any investigation. It was a girlfriend or whatever, signed up because they don't know.
Right.
I think, obviously if we went back in time and you knew what you know now and you said you were dropped in Oregon and you said, go find a brokerage, you were going to do your due diligence before
right.
Yeah. But the system part of it, you come back, you're here, your girlfriend says to sign up with her brokerage. Obviously your next 3 months in the business are huge.
Right.
So now you're forced to have the systems. Where do you start? Because again, for you, it's like a fire hose. I think you said basically in like 3 or 4 months, you did $10 million in real estate, right?
Well, about 6 months.
About 6 months.
Like July to December.
Still huge. A lot more than a lot of people do in a year, let alone an agent that's doing transaction number 4, 5, and 6 and beyond, right? So the term systems is key in that as young agent Kate, systems was not a word you had in your terminology, but now you do with your experience. But somewhere in that 3 to 6 months, you had to go and like get help. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm naturally a pretty organized person, like chaos. I like order. I like control. I like to see where everything is at all times. So for me, kind of a traditional CRM, while I use them, it's not my go-to. I don't favor them. So I had to figure out a way that I could see all of my clients at one time and make sure that I was touching base with them, make sure I knew where I was. And my systems have evolved. I mean, so my system back then was these 3 calendars I would keep on my wall, and I would have every transaction a different color, and I would have every single important critical date on that calendar so I could see everything at a 3-month snapshot. Well, now that's evolved and it's on my phone, and I don't keep it that way. I have a spreadsheet of every single transaction that's happening and where it is in the stage of the transaction, and I keep that flowing for every single year, and I have all of them I can go back to 2020. I do a buyer search spreadsheet that I share with the buyer. It's interactive, and in there is a box of everything that they've told me they're looking for in a house, and then
Keep reminding them.
that one you put on for.
Remember you said you wanted that.
You really only want to spend 5. But yeah, and it's interactive. So I write notes, they can write notes. And then when we actually hit the ground to go look at houses, I bring that with me. And I constantly go back to it. And I say, okay, remember, these are the ones that we're looking at. Let's cross them off. So I mean, it helps us my whole thing, and I say this a lot, is I want to be as efficient and effective as possible. So I don't want anyone else to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. I want to help them. I don't want to take them to look at houses that have nothing to do with what they're looking for. That's not helping anyone.
I think people who have, and they don't necessarily have to have a degree in project management, but because I think project management is more of a skill than an actual someone getting a degree in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you necessarily, I guess you can be taught some systems in project management school. But I think the organization, the attention to detail, as you mentioned in your bio, feeds into the project management brain you have there and how you function. Because that organization, because that's basically what you're doing. You're project managing every client, listing, hey, this is what you said, this is what we've looked at, and you're doing an engineer spreadsheet type calculation to them. And obviously, you're not showing 70 homes to one person anymore.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Fill it down to about 10.
So I think one of the topics I always bring up on the show is the choice of your brokerage. And whether it's a brand new agent listening to this, maybe you're in licensing, maybe they're just thinking about real estate, whatever. Obviously, if you're thinking about real estate, I'm sure Kate will talk to you. Have a cup of coffee with her and chat about how you should prepare to structure your business. Correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of just, went into it, got blown back. And then luckily you got with the right person through just being in the right place at the right time, meeting this person in Fernandina and being in the right place at the right time. 2020, 2021, was a great opportunity as a new agent to get a lot of at-bats because you could make mistakes and still sell homes.
Yes.
Yeah, there. But the choice of the brokerage and it's not in sometimes it's not necessarily literally the brokerage, but the people you surround yourself, which oftentimes are those people in that brokerage. Are you an office dweller? Do you like to go into the office? Are you like,
I'm way too out and
right.
about and going all the time.
How do I'm sure you've figured out too, though, and this is just I'm going to ask the question without knowing the answer. You've surrounded yourself, or you are in contact on a regular basis with other producing agents and feeding off each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I can kind of pivot and tell you the transition story from my brokerage in Amelia Island to where I'm at now with Keller Williams.
Yeah.
So back in 2021, I met a client who was a gold medal athlete, and I helped him buy a house. He and I had a great relationship. At that time, I was still with my brokerage in Amelia Island. Well, based on that relationship, he introduced me to his financial planner or advisor, who introduced me to another agent out of DC who was running this amazing referral network called Next Move. So Next Move was a sports and entertainment focused referral group that was invite only. So I got invited to be a part of this group, and it was amazing. I mean, talk about the top agents in the country that were handpicked.
How did you originally get connected with the gold medalist?
Zillow.
Interesting.
Yes, which is funny because when, I found out later after the fact that the person who I ultimately connected with was trying to find him an agent in Jacksonville, and the one that they connected him with, he didn't connect with. So he just randomly reached out on Zillow. So anyway, so he and I got connected. We sold the house. We've stayed in touch this whole time. He connects me with his financial planner, who connects me with the head of the referral group, who is out of a Keller Williams office. I was not. From there, I continued to give and get great referrals through this all over the country. So that was my referral group. If I ever had to give one out, and then likewise, when they had a Jacksonville one, they were giving it in to me. So I was able to help, coaches, athletes.
Even though you weren't in the franchise yet.
Well, because I was a part of the referral group. So you could be with any brokerage and be a part of the referral group. From there, so that group grew. So when I got into it, it was maybe 50 people. Ultimately, it grew to just under 100, but we were doing so much volume as a group. I mean, well into 200 million, that Gary Keller and some of the other top people at Keller Williams reached out to the two guys who were running it and said, we want you to start something within Keller Williams. From that, Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment was born. So that's how we have Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment today. Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment. So that was about 2022 timeframe, late 21, early 22. Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment grew so big. We were doing over 300 million, within that group, that the guys who started that decided to run and start an expansion team where they could hand select teams across the country to operate under the Next Move umbrella, still within Keller Williams. So they reached out there was about 10 of us at the beginning all over the country. They reached out to me to run one in the Jacksonville, North Florida, South Georgia area. And I was really hesitant. As much as I believed in what they were doing and wanted to be a part of it, I really loved my brokerage that I was with in Amelia Island. So it was definitely not a decision I made lightly. And when we talked earlier about how things just kind of happened, this was my chance to really say, okay, I have to interview. So I did. I interviewed and really did a lot of research on Keller Williams. I mean, obviously I'd heard of them, but I just didn't know a lot about them.
Well, but then you're getting your Keller. I mean, we got Keller Williams like partners, Keller Williams Jacksonville. There's a couple others in the general area. So you were kind of the only one, though, right?
No, I'm Keller Williams Jacksonville.
You are Keller. Okay, under the Keller Williams Jacksonville. Okay.
So once I decided to say yes, then that's when my Next Move Atlantic Coast team was born. That I'm now the lead.
Okay, now I get how the logo comes in, and okay.
So that's the very long story of how I transitioned into Keller Williams.
Yeah. I guess, well, you'll go back to our question about the brokerage. So when you're doing that, I mean, if you were telling other agents, what were some of the things that you were looking for that you needed? I mean, obviously these leads are coming through here. So it's like, you're almost like, man, do I want to give up on that? Are they going to find someone else to replace me? That's over here. But I also don't want to go somewhere where it's going to run my business into the ground either. Because just because some guys in DC chose Keller Williams Jacksonville to be the Keller Williams in the local area to handle the sports and entertainment doesn't mean that they're going to be very good at it. Just like the gold medalist met this agent originally and they weren't working out, and then you just so happened to be on deck somehow and got the next at bat with him. That could happen at Keller Williams Jacksonville very easily. So what kind of things were you looking for in that Keller Williams Jacksonville when to make that decision to make that jump?
Well, it was interesting because I didn't really think I was looking for training, because not that I felt like I knew it all by any means, but I had done a lot of training up until that point.
Right.
What I didn't realize was the wealth of knowledge and training that Keller Williams offers. So the more I dove into that and the more I realized, that they have just layers upon layers of all this incredible training that I could tap into and be a part of. I liked the fact that they pour into new agents. Even though I wasn't a new agent, they pour so much into new agents, and I felt like that was really something I missed out on. So even though, again, it wasn't something that I was directly needing because I was not a new agent, I loved that they were pouring so much time and energy into making sure these new agents weren't going to fail and were going to be successful. Loved that about it. But
Well, I want to drill in that for a little bit, or for a second, because you make a point that's very important. Because you can go to every broker in this town, they're going to tell you their technology and their education, their focus, or it's great or whatever.
Right.
I don't know what they're measuring up against, because everyone's doing it at certain levels. Obviously, some of the boutique brokerages don't have the Keller Williams backing, or because of the large numbers, they're able to, obviously, they need to have this huge training or Real or EXP. Obviously, they live off having to provide that value all day long. Where the face-to-face brokerage, which Keller Williams is also, when you say training, I think, like you said, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And for an agent out there who may be struggling, maybe you've been in the business for a couple of years and you're not doing as well, or I think if you're listening to this show right now, you should be evaluating your brokerage. I had the Wolf of Real Estate on last week, Erica Wolf with Real, and she was talking about she was providing more value than the broker at the brokerage she was at. So she just went off and did her own thing. That's why she joined Real and created her own team, because she was the one providing all the value to everyone underneath, and it was taking away from her business.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about training, what were some of the things like you felt like you missed that you're going, oh my God, they're training that on that? I wish I had that a year ago, type of thing.
Well, one of the first trainings I did with Keller Williams was a class called Bold. It's an 8-week program where they set goals for you. You had to make, and it's a lot of stuff that probably people are doing anyway, but when you're being tracked, kind of back to what we were talking about, and you're having to log in and put your numbers up there for your table and seeing what everyone else is doing. So there was all these mini challenges in it, which I loved.
Get your competitive spirit out a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, going back to iron sharpens iron. I mean, again, you're in a room with people who are hungry, who want to learn more, like-minded. So we were all able, the masterminds that would come out of that, just sitting around eating lunch was amazing. But then also just kind of giving you that little push. We did it in the fall of last year. So giving you that little push into 2024 was so great too. It was a lot of, things that aren't even necessarily real estate related, where you just have to mentally focus and get prepared, and just taking your entire, mind, body, spirit into real estate into the next year. So touched on a lot of really great things.
You said some interesting things there as well. Again, not new, but I want your feeling on it. And I think I'm going to lead into my grit thing from this. Taking the time, you used the term mastermind, to talk shop with other agents, what's going on. Because like you said, when you first got started, you kind of felt like you were on an island, right? You're running around, you're showing 70 homes, and nobody's telling you, don't do that.
Right. Or, hey, why don't you try this spreadsheet to keep everyone organized?
Yeah. Or, ask these questions here. This will help you out. You're just throwing it out there. And to take time every day, or take advantage. I know, at 12:30 today, they're having a group is doing a mastermind over at the Landmark across the road here. There are things like that going on all over. There's lunch and learns going on. The lenders are providing, or the title companies, or whatever. Taking the time, like you said, to sharpen the sword. Because I think a lot of people go, I don't want to go. That's a wasted 30 minutes. Well, and I want your feedback on this. One, you might actually pick up a nugget, which might make you sound more intelligent in front of your client. Two, you may run into a couple other agents who you may be on the other side of a transaction. And as you know, to sell 68 homes in 2021, you probably had many multiple offer transactions coming at you. How did you win from the buyer side, right? And a lot of it's like who you know. Oh, this is one from Kate, so we know it's solid. We know the customer, we like working with Kate because they knew you. How important is it to go out and find these trainings and really build it into your schedule that you're going to do, so many hours a month?
Oh, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It truly is. And I try to be a part of something at least once a week within all variety, not just here locally, but on a national level, whether it's a Keller Williams, whether it's, like you were saying, it's a title company, a lender, or just, this Friday I'm getting together with just a bunch of other women in real estate, and we're going to just talk and have lunch and brainstorm ideas that way. And I think to be successful in this business, you can never be complacent. And I think the minute you think, I'm at the top, I've done it all, or, maybe you hit your goal for that year and you just kind of sit back, I think that's when the business side, can kind of start slipping away.
Yeah. All right. Let's go into, we talked about a pre-show. I really think, and I said, I already wrote the preface of this book. At least it's a rough draft version. I have the chapters laid out thanks to ChatGPT helping me analyze all these transcripts. But this business involves a lot of grit. And like you said, you were out and you came back. Luckily, whatever the path led you, brought you back. You are going to walk into some nasty homes that it's not all HGTV and, maybe some of the beautiful homes on the Amelia on the beach or something like that. But, it's real estate. You're all over Northeast Florida and from all extremes, all aspects of dealing with people who are not always nice, which, maybe you could tell us, maybe if you fired somebody, you could tell us that story. But I think there's three things involved with the grit, and that's love, laughter, and consistency. Tell us, been in the business since 6 years, right? Going almost 7. What is it that you love about real estate?
I love truly, and I know this is cliche, but I truly love being able to help people. I love nothing more than on closing day when they are so excited, no matter how tumultuous the transaction might have been up until that point, they are genuinely so happy and so excited to have made it there, to have crossed the finish line, whether they're selling and they're getting that wire into their account or they're buying and they're getting those keys. And it really, it's so funny because I've seen it throughout so many different people, but whether it's your first home or your 8th home, there's still just a genuine joy that they have at that moment. And truly, that is what I love. I love it.
Well, it is a chapter in their life. They're transitioning out of that home to wherever they're going, and now someone's coming in. It truly is a chapter change for both parties in it. And like you said, they're refreshed. Like I said, whatever that I think we get excited about new things and for sure to be there. When I mentioned laughter, I think all of us, you've done enough business. I know you probably in the news business probably got, I don't want to say the word, what I really want to say. I'm going to be polite, but I think, as anyone getting into the news world, like you said, you got to put in your dues. You're treated like garbage sometimes. I mean, I imagine those opportunities, and there was probably times where you were like, you still kept doing it, but I mean, I would imagine, and there's probably been some times in this business where you were if you weren't in tears, you were at the point of tears. Yes. Or like, why am I doing this? Yeah. And now, after having a record year, 68 sales in 21. I mean, there's agents that it takes them a good agent 3 years to do that. A really decent agent 3 years to do that. You did it in 1 year, 68 transactions. So you've probably got a little pep to your step, a little different. Now when those curveballs come at you, the hostile client, that maybe you want to fire or whatever, you laugh about it. And maybe internally. That's what I'm talking. Tell us about a situation you might have had where at least today that you reflect back, hey, I've done this before. I can overcome this obstacle.
Yeah. So I was selling a house. We had multiple offers. This was last year. And the buyer was not an honest buyer, let's just say. And the agent was an agent who was a true nightmare.
So you had nightmare buyer and nightmare agent together?
Yes. And okay. I was this representing.
Match made in heaven.
I was representing the seller who was going through a divorce. So they were completely at odds with each other.
Yep.
One was in the legal world, so
Oh,
knew everything. And here I
man,
was.
you're checking all the boxes.
Like, okay, how do we hold this together? Long story short, the buyer, we ended up getting in a binder dispute, which was my first time, in almost 200 transactions ever having a binder dispute. Turns out we fortunately were in the right, and the agent had done her dates incorrectly. But all that to say, it was truly, there were so many times where, yes, I was crying. Yes, I was like, why am I in this field? Like, kind of all those emotions just bubbled up. And it was a long transaction. So so that first one ended up falling apart, which got us into the binder dispute. We ended up going under contract with someone else. And it was, still a bumpy road until the closing. And
Yeah.
truly, when I got to that closing, I was so relieved on so many levels for just everyone.
Yeah.
But to tie it back to the laughter, I am naturally a very optimistic person. So I always try to think, no matter what, something good is going to come out of this. And my attitude the entire first time when we were under contract with the not honest buyer was, at the end of the day, this is going to work out. Everything will work out. Whether it's with them, whether it's with someone else, it's going to work out. And so I just kind of always tie back to that. And that's really just my mantra, that no matter what, at the end of the day, it's all going to work out. So
I may title this podcast, Something Good Will Come Out of This.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people need to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, again, I think I told you pre-show, I follow a lot of John Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he's a very religious man. He's a pastor.
Yeah.
That's where he came from. His father, he memorized all these quotes and everything. That's why he's so good at what he does. And you got to have that attitude. I think you laugh at it because something good is going to come out of it. And I think something I've been saying for a long time, I was watching the news, or somebody was getting interviewed or something like that, or the different things I watch on, and someone did someone bad, right? They screwed someone over, whatever shape or form like it. And you've seen this happen in your field. And the reality is, there's a phrase, every dog will have its day. Mm-hmm. And that phrase means something. It may be in the next 15 minutes. It may not be for 15 years. It may means they go to hell when it's all over. You don't know.
Exactly.
But let it go. What good will come out of it for you? What are you going to learn from this situation? You showing your girlfriend 70 homes may have actually been a cornerstone to your success, because how important you think your systems are today. Mm-hmm. Something good came out of that. At least that's what we're going to say it did, because we don't know.
Right.
Right.
Well, no, and I completely agree. And it's so funny when I think about that particular house that had that whole drama. Mm-hmm. So not only did I sold the house the first time to a buyer. Then I sold it for that person. So that's 2 transactions.
You didn't sell to the original couple, though, the divorced couple, right?
So I was representing, so that was, okay. There's been so many transactions.
These are good stories.
Yeah,
Good.
on this one house.
Yeah.
So there's this one house.
Yeah.
I sold it to a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Then when that buyer went to sell, I sold it to the divorced couple. But
so they were actually number 2.
Yes, but I did not represent them as the buyer. They were just connected more with me than their agent. So when they went to go sell, they called me instead. So then I sold it for them. Throughout that transaction, I got to know the neighbor over here. So then I sold their house. So, it's just, and that's my whole point. Like, had I just walked away, had I just been like, yeah, well,
or caught an attitude.
Yeah, like just, I don't know how this is ever going to work, but let's just give up now type thing.
Right.
That whole thing would never have happened.
Right.
And then even to take it a step further, the divorced couple, I helped find separate houses. So, there's been, I think, now 6 transactions.
Well,
one house.
Kate, that's why you're good.
Yeah.
Because whatever you did, we don't know, because we weren't the fly on the wall watching you, but something good will come out of it. And I think sometimes we talk about on the show, that agent causing conflict on the other side, like getting too emotionally involved, especially like if there's a negotiation, like it's their money or something. Right. It's like, dude, you're just a conduit. You just need to pass. Here's the offer. Make the offer. If they don't like it, then come back with a counter. But don't get all emotional. It's not your deal. But the bottom line is, something good will come out of it. Because you knew your job is you have a buyer and a seller. Someone wants to sell that house and you have someone who wants to buy it. Let's figure it out,
right,
and make it work. And having that attitude will get you through all those bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you another funny story.
Go ahead.
If I can.
Yes.
Okay, so this one just happened. So I have a condo, and I don't want to say the name of it, but I had a condo under contract last week. And we were supposed to close on Wednesday. Lender denies the loan on Tuesday based on the condo questionnaire. The property manager...
Should have called me, but go ahead.
Well, I know.
We have a great condo team at Town Bank Mortgage. Just put out there. Go ahead.
So I was like, okay, my sellers were like, we're supposed to close tomorrow. The buyers are completely distraught. The other agent was good, but she wasn't kind of thinking, how do I keep this together? So I looked up, because they were financing, I looked up every person who had closed in the past 6 months within that condo who closed with a loan.
Yep.
I reached out to the agents on both sides. The funny thing is, they all directed me to a particular lender. Called that lender. He said, yes, I was able to get this condo on our approved list. I can get this closed for you. We're now closing next week.
Yeah.
And I, again, just been like, sorry, we're going to have to put it back on the market and only hope for a cash offer. Then who knows when we would have.
No, that's totally out of box thinking. And again, we would think that's common sense because you and I have that saying, this is not dead because because you've done enough. And I know, especially with condos, just to put condos out there, and I think it's gotten a little tighter recently, maybe in the last couple of years. There's some lender, they really don't want to do the condos, but I think what it is their condo team, because of a lot of regulations or guidelines or whatever has changed in the background, the lenders are not up to speed. If they don't have a solid condo team that knows what's going on and will tell you what they need to get it approved, don't be discouraged when one lender says no, because I had the exact same situation happen in August. Literally closed it within a week after 2 lenders said no.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we have a condo team that knows and drills down, and we were able to get one of them when it was two different condos. One, we had to get some alternative paperwork basically because the new guidelines required this appraisal to be done on the complex and all this other jazz. And if you don't have that to match the insurance and blah, blah, blah. But how can we work around it? Because they're still working on those things and they're big appraisers and they're expensive and but the law says they have to do them every 3 years. But again, having the solid people there. So that's a great point. You went out of the box, and obviously if you do have condos, you got to go, who's done a loan in here recently, right?
Yeah.
Because generally if we done a loan in there in the last 2 months, which I'm sure this lender is the same way, 2 months ago and it's already approved, they just go ahead and stamp it because it was just 2 months ago. Now 6-8 months, they probably want to go back and get some updated paperwork, but boom. Yeah, because a lot of that paperwork is yearly stuff anyway, their budget and all that kind of jazz that they need. Yeah, no, good tip there. We talked about, if I saw on your LinkedIn, which just leads into another topic I always like to discuss, you were listed as a team lead. I think when you went to Keller Williams, if I'm not mistaken, based on I think one of the challenges, which you obviously hit in 21, maybe you hit in 20, I don't know what your numbers were then, but as an agent grows as a solo agent, getting back to John Maxwell, hit a lid. He used the term lid. You can't do any more by yourself.
Right.
So, and as a leader, you may have had some of these people that were working for you. What are some of the things that if you were forecasting someone, say, hey, this is what's going to happen in your career. If you get good, you're going to get up to about here and then you're going to be pulling your hair out because now it's time to get a transaction order, get an assistant, virtual assistant, whatever, all these different ways people do it. Tell us how you've done it and how you would recommend, maybe through some trial and error, to someone who's in that situation right now that's kind of hitting that lid.
Yeah. So in March of 2021, I realized when I was up at 4 a.m, going to bed at 2:00 in the morning, barely sleeping, that obviously something was going to give. It was either going to be quality of life and family time or my career. And I didn't want to give up either. So I chose to get an assistant, an actual real live assistant. I interviewed a girl, hired a girl. She was young. She
put her on a salary.
Put her on a salary. She did not work out. I had her for about a month, and I think she thought time was optional and kind of work when she wanted. And I was like, yeah, no, I need you like between 9 and 5. I need your full attention. So quickly, within about 2 weeks, hired someone else who was phenomenal. She was actually a former client. She was one of those clients that was just on it all the time. So as soon as her house closed, I said, I want to interview you to be my assistant. And she knew I actually had I don't want to say bad, but the not working out assistant during her transaction. And this girl who I ended up hiring was running multiple companies and just on it. So she came on board with me kind of right at the end, I guess right at the beginning of April of 2021. And truly, I mean, I say it all the time, like she is like the right half of my brain. I mean, she knows what I'm going to ask before I even ask it. And we've been working together for so long now. So she gets how I think, I get how she thinks. Again, we go back to our systems. We have an amazing system where she, I have outlined every single day what it is she needs to do for that day, but then she also knows. So she's doing so much other stuff at the same time.
Well, again, it goes back to that word system.
Right.
You have the system in place. So she already knows what you're going to ask and what you need to have done.
Exactly. And she really just is phenomenal. And it's been able to help me to still be able, because, one of the things when I got into real estate is I did not want to give up time with my family. Family is super important to me. My kids are extremely involved, not only in school, but in sports and church, everything.
It happens so fast, man.
Yeah.
They grow up so fast and you're like, oh my God, man, what happened 2 years ago? I wanted to do this with him. And now it's, now he's too old, right? Or whatever. Yeah.
And I just didn't want that. And I knew the way to kind of circumvent that was to bring on someone else to help me. So yes, I'm a team lead. Yes, it's myself and then my assistant who's licensed. I just brought on another agent about a month ago. So I'm very excited about that to see, how that takes us. And she's already been phenomenal and, has been able to assist with things. My assistant's also licensed in Florida and Georgia. So, not that she's doing transactions, but, if I need
the fact she's licensed helps you out for some of the things that
100%. Yeah. She prefers to kind of be behind the scenes and I like kind of being out, but she's great. She can do anything. She's phenomenal.
Well, isn't that key though, when you're finding like that first person that didn't work out, I know the DISC assessment, right? That's one of the things. There's other personality tests and so forth. There's some people who, like your current assistant, like you said, she likes to be behind the scenes. She likes to be in her cube in front of her computer and pull her strings that way. You are the forward-facing person. It's so, what's the rocket fuel is that, you have the visionary and the instigator. Integrator is the word. It's so important to find that. It's not just, hey, I like you, whatever, let's work together.
Right.
You have to find, and I think you found the rocket fuel here because she likes to do what she's doing and you're doing what you're doing. Now, I think one of the challenges, and we have it in the loan officer world as well as the real estate world, all of a sudden, some of those people who are in that back office see what the front office is making. Well, the front office is the one that's actually bringing in the business and actually closing the business. You're just pushing paper is not the right word, but you're doing your scheduling or you have the salary. If you've got someone who wants to come in as an assistant, but eventually wants to be an agent or comes in as an assistant and wants to be the loan officer, they're not going to be the good assistant. I'm telling you right now, don't waste your time. Don't think they're going to graduate up. They will. What will happen is all of a sudden one day come in and say, I want to be an agent or I want to be that loan officer. And you're like, oh, okay, now you're caught. Now you got to find a replacement. And then that person becomes the loan officer and comes to the front person and they realize we're really not good at being the front person. And then they're gone.
Right.
Yeah, completely. So it's very, very important to really tune in. And I think you got, I don't know, it was probably a little bit of luck because a lot of times it is when you find that assistant that just meshes with you perfectly.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you recommend to be, and it's not necessarily hire because there's a lot of transaction coordinators out there that are pay for play, which is great. You don't have a deal, don't worry, you don't have to worry about paying them. You have a deal, and I think it's so cheap for what the transaction coordinators are doing. If you're not using a pay-for-play transaction coordinator and you're north of $5-6 million, you're missing out. You could be at $10 million if you just pay a little bit to a transaction coordinator, relieve some of your schedule off.
So when I was at my first brokerage, the broker said, once you hit $3 million, that's when you hire an assistant. No one there had transaction coordinators. Everyone always had like an actual assistant. And I'm so thankful I did that because
one-on-one?
Yeah.
One-on-one. Interesting. Okay.
And that is, I think, what was able to level my business so fast because I was able to have that support and get me to those different levels. So when we were talking about ceilings, having an assistant was the game changer for me to get to the next level. 100%. I think a transaction coordinator is great, but it is just one thing. I think if you really want to take your career to the next level within real estate, I do think you need to have an actual live assistant.
Would you share that assistant? Because I don't know if someone at $3 or $4 million has enough to do.
But you do. And that's what I learned is there's so much they can be doing. I mean, they can be marketing. They can be setting up all of your drip campaigns. They can be doing your newsletter. They can be doing all of your...
I think where the challenge lies there, and it was funny, I was listening to Go Bethke, who I had on the show a couple months ago. She was talking about, she's got, I don't know how many assistants she's got, because she's doing all these trainings and stuff. She's doing a lot of different things. But she was talking about how people said, they had to, fire their assistant. You got to find the assistant that actually is going to take some of the initiative, because you don't have time to sit there and like, okay, go do this, and they go do it, and then they stop. They've got to kind of involve themselves in the business as well. Hey, let me, do this for you. Let me figure out, they got to find things to do to occupy their time. And if you don't have someone who's like a go-getter like that,
Right.
I could see where the challenge lies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think right now in this current market? I mean, what are some of the challenges that you're having? I mean, the listings are lasting a little longer and so forth. What are some of the little extra things that you didn't have to do in 2021 that you're doing now?
Extra things. Well,
I'll drill it down a little bit on your listings. I imagine, anybody who has any amount of listings right now, there's some listings that are great property, great neighborhood, it's just perfect on the golf course, whatever it is, has a pool, everything any of these people want, boom, it's gone that weekend. But there's some other listings that are kind of more of the just kind of general home that's sitting, or you get caught with that person who bought in a new construction community and has only been there a year or two, and they're still building houses, and that house is sitting.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So something that's kind of newer for me is diving into the social media side of things. So that is not, I was we were throwing up like new listing and then that was it. We're now diving into reels. We're doing a lot more with video. We're incorporating, I have a YouTube channel now. So we're really trying to.
That's what I was going to before you were already knocking on the door, basically. I was going to your YouTube channel. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think that's been the biggest thing that I've done differently in this market where things are sitting is I've just been a lot more I don't even know the right word, but just a lot more involved in the video marketing side of the listings. And it's funny because I would always get videos for the houses with the photographer, but it wasn't until a few months ago that we were like, oh, well, why are we not putting these on YouTube?
Yeah.
So, it's just like those little switches that we've started doing recently.
I would go back, if you still have those videos archived somewhere on a drive, I would put them on your YouTube. I think YouTube is there's a handful of agents that and on some of them, I think I probably maybe there's an agent I don't know, but I've had a lot of them on, but I'm talking a lot of them, meaning like 4 or 5 that are really doing YouTube. But like you said, you go and spend all that money and do a video on 123 Main Street in Beacon Lakes or whatever. You need to put that on YouTube because someone's going to be searching Beacon Lakes and I want to move there. What's the neighborhood like? And your video is going to pop up.
Yeah.
If you got the right search mechanism. Now, what is your attitude towards video? What's your mindset towards it to sell you? Because ultimately that video that might be out there for 3 years may sell you, but what if you're doing it right?
Correct. And that's where I'm really trying to grow and learn right now. I've actually taken a social media class to get better because I think I'm really trying to adjust my attitude towards video and look at it as, what can I get out of it? What can I bring to it? How can I help my clients? How can I help future customers? So again, looking at it from like a holistic perspective and really just trying to dive in and learn and get as much as I can from it. It is, definitely a newer platform for me right now. And I think some people kill it. And so I'm trying to follow, a few of those people. What are they
doing? Yeah. But some of the things they're doing are so obvious. And I'm asking just because I'm just inquisitive because I think 90% of the agents miss the ball. And then, 90% don't even do anything. Let's just put it that way. Then there's another percentage that are doing it, but they're not doing what they need to sell. And I'm going to throw this at you to try to bring it out naturally without just giving you the answer that I think is the answer. What is it that helped you with that one house that we were talking about, that you had the divorced couple and the problem buyer, but you had some transactions, got the neighbor. What do you think was it about that transaction is why Kate got so many other transactions just from that one address?
Relationship. That's exactly what it ties back to. It ties back to my relationship with all the different people, how I interacted within every single person, my professionalism, my ethics, my just being able to, relate to all of them.
So bring that to the video now.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some key things that you think are important in every video that you do?
I think being authentic, being true to yourself, doing stuff that you would want to watch.
Right.
As opposed to just stuff that's, more cookie cutter and kind of what everyone else is doing.
Well, I mean, I think one thing, is, being authentic. I think emotions creates memories, whether it's crying or laughing. If you get someone to react or even just, smile because, maybe it was funny, but they're like, start laughing out loud or something. But they just, a lot of times we're watching a video and we just smile because it's funny, right? Yeah. It's just a natural, we're laughing, but, because it's just us, we're just smiling to it. But that reaction causes a memory thing. But I think agents miss out because they're so afraid to be in the video. And I think the only way, the true way, that's why I like doing the shows, the podcast live. Yeah. It's okay, occasionally to do a virtual one, but to really, go deep, you've got to get, because our facial reactions, what you're saying something, I might smile or gesture back. There's just natural human things going back and forth. And people don't understand that's actually happening in the video. And when you're out there and you're getting them to laugh, or they see you, maybe you turn the wrong direction, whatever it is, you do something in the video. I think don't make it look so pro. Like I said, look authentic. Yeah. Look like you're a person. Just because you're a great real estate agent doesn't mean you're a runway model that just knows how to walk just perfectly. And, because the runway model would not necessarily make a great real estate agent, because a lot of times they don't open their mouth. You know what I'm saying? But being authentic and just I think people bond with you, the authenticity, they relate to you. That's the word I want. They relate to you by seeing you in the video and going, oh, okay, she looks cool. So I know when I drive up to that house, this is the person who's going to walk out and, greet me, or this is the person who's going to pull up behind me because we're meeting, or I come into our office. This is the person I'm looking for.
It's so interesting you say that. I was on a phone call talking about, masterminding with another agent in California. And we were talking about video and being authentic. And one of the things she said to me is, she's like, they just want to see snippets of your day. They want to just see behind the scenes stuff. You're driving to a listing or you're driving to a showing, just kind of talking about what's going on in your day. And I asked her, and I'm like, oh, so you mean get out and put on your microphone and kind of do it as you're walking? She was like, no, literally just sitting in your car, what you're really doing in that moment, that is how you translate and you show everyone, what's going on, what's the behind the scenes.
Yeah. I think some people get a little carried away with the stories because they're like 15.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, keep it to, 30 seconds or so. I think we can get a little carried away. I mean, maybe because some of them are driving down the car. But I appreciate what they're doing, because they're doing exactly what you're talking about. Hey, I'm on my way to a listing. This is, my tragedy of the morning or whatever, because obviously I'm so encircled with a lot of the agents, a lot of this stuff pops up and I'm seeing who's doing it regularly and not. But you're right. I mean, people want to know that especially, it's not necessarily the initial meeting. I think the initial meeting, the person, when you first get that actual lead, if you want to call it that, from a YouTube or an Instagram or whatever, they're seeing you do business. They're seeing your professionalism, the way you dress, that's, the way you carry yourself, basically, how you communicate and so forth. The top of mind part, so after they become one of your customers and they start following you on social media, those things, I'm going about my day, I'm going about my realtor day, keeps you top of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether it's, it's making recommendations of a restaurant or just, hey, I just had a great client. They're from, California. They're looking for this type of house. I'm going to find it for them, just talking like that.
Yeah.
And going. Yeah, 100%. We'll finish up with a couple of tips. Let's put it that way. This summer we had the buyer broker agreement. How did you tackle that from a standpoint? Were you doing buyer broker agreements before that? And then if you were, what are you doing differently? Or were you at zero and now you're doing them?
So in Georgia, buyer broker agreements were always required for clients.
Okay.
So it was business as usual. It was no big deal. We were always getting them at the front end. So I just took that and transitioned it to Florida. So I just explained it.
How far would Georgia go, though? I mean, would they actually into them like committing to a dollar amount type of thing, or just an agreement that we're working together?
No, it had a percentage or a dollar amount.
Okay.
And a time limit. I mean, it was very much like a listing agreement.
So Georgia didn't really have to do much after on August 17th or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
So with the Florida one, I just transitioned with my clients. I really have not personally had any pushback at all. And maybe it's because I had been explaining it all this time for Georgia and it just, I just subbed in Florida. But yeah, I have not had any issues with that.
So, and I've heard from many agents, and I think you'll probably agree with this. Some they say they're doing better because of the buyer broker agreement than they were before, because there's less. I don't know if, well, I don't know. I would say because of it, maybe because you're taking time to explain your value and what you're going to do for your, whatever, you're going to ask for to be paid there. What do you think is being successful in this presentation, having been doing it since you started real estate? What do you think is your approach to it that is so successful for you?
I do an assumptive close. So I
do too.
I go into it just assuming they're going to sign it.
And I assume there's nobody else involved.
Exactly. So, I mean, I just kind of lead with, hey, this is what it is. I explain it to them. I explain the commission side of it. I explain my value. And then I say, and this is where you sign. So I don't know if that's why I've not gotten a lot of pushback,
Right.
But I mean, it's concise. It's to the point.
Do you think a lot of, because you're seeing from both sides, obviously, contracts coming to you or, well, let's jump to the listing side.
Okay.
Are you advertising that a percentage of the seller's willing to give? Like if I called you and said, hey, I saw your listing there, are you quickly going, yeah, hey, my seller's already prepared to pay you 3% or 2%, whatever it is? Are you throwing that out there? Or are you one of those agents say, we have budgeted for buyer compensation? Send me your offer. Your offer.
No, so I haven't really had either experience. What's happened with all of my listings, which maybe I've been fortunate with this, but I'd say 95% of the agents who are showing my listing, when they're scheduling it and getting confirmed in showing time, are texting me, hey, do you have a compensation agreement?
Right.
So then I'm able to just email that out to them.
So you tell them point blank, this is what we got.
Yeah, I don't believe in being, hiding. I just want to be as transparent as possible. I want to be as fair as possible because that's what I want. On the other end as a buyer, I would expect that from a listing agent. So.
Well, I think there's a conflict in that because I've personally heard a story where the listing agent, I don't think had the savviness, and they basically discounted their services. So they felt that the buyer's agent should discount their services because they only negotiated.
Well, that's on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, now obviously you putting it out there, you're saying, hey, yeah, we've got 2.5% for you or 3%. You putting it out there. Well, I would assume they're writing an offer. Some of them are just like, okay, well then I'll just write an offer for that same 2 or 2.5%. And you're going with it. So you're not having any kind of, this buyer's agent came back and said, well, I got a buyer's agreement and they're paying me that. That's 1% more than what you're saying you're going to compensate me. So you need to go back to your seller and see if they want to take my offer on your house that's been sitting there for 60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it creates that. So there's a strategery involved in whether or not you just, openly disclose it. But obviously if you feel you have the upper hand and you just say, yeah, we've got so much budgeted, then it's an easy sell to your seller. Hey, the offer came in. They want exactly what we budgeted. Go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that makes everyone happier. It's a win-win situation in the end, and that's what I'm all about.
Well, I think it's having the attitude that we're going to throw the ball out there, and it may come back a little differently than what we sent it out, but we're prepared to go either way and deal with it.
Fortunately, I've not had that happen, and I don't know if it's because I've been so transparent and upfront with everything, but I've not had an offer come in that doesn't match what the seller.
Well, it's probably because you're really good at explaining to the seller, your customer, you're listing their house, that it's important to have a reasonable compensation. It's going to make everything go smoother if you do, and more offers are going to come in if we already have it budgeted versus them fighting for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't think a lot of agents have completely grasped that. There's still that little bit of animosity, and I think there's going to be some more changes. Hopefully the new Department of Justice pulls off, because I really think they've got as I was watching some History Channel early this morning, their boot on their throat. I think DOJ has the boot on the throat of the NAR, the National Association, and I have a feeling, when that gets relieved January 20th, we hopefully will feel a little more free and sail a little more, from that standpoint. All right. What are 3 things that you think every agent should be doing today with today's marketplace? If someone's out there right now thinking their business is not, which there's a lot of numbers that are down. There's no doubt about it. I can go and look at everyone's numbers, what they did last year and what they did this year. And they're, some of the top producers aren't where they're at. Now, there's some people doing actually better, weirdly, but they are. But for the most part, numbers are down. I mean, we know statistically, nationally, we know this. I think we're going to see a lot of flush out, not only in the mortgage world, but in the agent world, of people not renewing their license January 1st. we're going to see a real change in 25. I think it's going to get down to, it's going to be great because there's, the top agents are staying in, right? They're producing. Where it's going to flush out some of these ones that are taking these onesies and twosies, and obviously then the top agents will have more to feed off of, so to speak. I think at the loan officer world, same thing. You're going to see a lot of people just, getting out completely. So it's going to be a real interesting 2025. So if you got this new agent that came on, what are some of the things, or, someone at Keller Williams, they tell you, hey, we want you to talk to these new agents. What are 3 things you think they should be doing right now in their business consistently, with daily, weekly, monthly?
Okay. So daily, obviously staying top of mind with your clients. I think you need to be touching base with at least, if you don't have 10, then you need to find 10. Maybe you're in the grocery store, maybe you're doing something, you're
Right.
school pickup, but I think you need to stay top of mind and at least make contact with a minimum of 10 people a day. I think that's number 1. Number 2.
Is it necessary talking about real estate? When you say get a hold of 10, what do you mean by
If
that?
it's a past client, maybe, but talk about something relevant. Wish them happy Thanksgiving. Ask them what their holiday plans are. I think just putting yourself out there, real estate will come. The majority of, especially, I do a ton with past clients, but just kind of within my sphere, I'm not out there always talking about real estate, but they know that that's what I do, so they know they can come to me for it. But if you're always the person talking about real estate, then it puts you in a box, and I'd rather be a wealth of things. So I'd say number 1, just communicate, talk to people, get to know people, be friendly, smile, talk to them. Number 2, just don't be stagnant. Especially as we're going into the holidays and into January, which can be a little bit of a slower time in real estate. Don't just sit back and just think, oh, I'm just going to ride it out until spring.
Yeah, take the foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so busy because I'm decorating the tree tonight. Oh, give me a break.
Right. I think that's the worst thing to do, is to become stagnant. And I think if you do have a slower December or a slower January, then that's the time when you're sharpening up on some other skill. Maybe you're reading a negotiation book. Maybe you're reading a sales book. Maybe you're attending a seminar. Maybe you're, really seeking out those masterminds, like you were saying, that are literally, you could go to one breakfast, lunch, and dinner almost every day here in Jacksonville. So find a few to go to.
Yeah, if you want a free lunch or breakfast, they're out there.
Every day.
Every day.
So, take time to do that right now. I think so. It's, staying top of mind, communicating with people, not becoming stagnant, getting out there and doing those trainings. And then I think number 3 is just staying positive. Just, again, just knowing that the business is going to come.
Something good will come out of this.
And the funny thing is, December is normally one of my slower months. This December is a record-breaking, shattering month.
Wow.
Out of all of my years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
And I want to make point of that.
Yeah.
This is a record-breaking month for you. I hear now. I can appreciate if you're scared to come on my podcast. I totally understand. Not anyone is they feel the camera here and they're intimidated. I understand that totally, because we see it every day. You and I obviously are not like that, but you took this hour and a half to come sit down, and because you're looking at your business. We talked about, getting you the video. You're adding it to your YouTube. You're seeing this as a content creation thing, an opportunity for you to get out there in front of people across Facebook, because you could be creating social media posts for the next hour and a half, but I could tell you I'm going to make more content for you in this hour and a half that'll last you the next 2 months. Yeah. But to come up with an excuse that you're too busy, and you're having a record month. I'm just want to throw that out there to some of the top producers that give me that excuse, because I'd rather you just tell me I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Now just tell me you're not ready. Don't tell me you're too busy, because you're not that busy.
You're never too busy, in my opinion. You can always carve out time for something.
Right. So. All right, last question. This is the canned interview question. Why should they use Kate Swain for their real estate needs?
Because I genuinely care about my buyers and my sellers. I have sold $15,000 lots, and I have sold multi-million-dollar homes. And I will tell you, I treat every single person the exact same way. Everyone is getting white glove, concierge treatment. Every single person is getting my thoughtfulness, my expertise, my efficiency. And the other thing is, I never want, even though right now I have over 10 things under contract, and like I said, it's going to be a huge month, not one of those clients ever feel like they're in competition with the other ones. Because when they call me, if I can't get to it right then, I will call them right back. And so I really try to make every single person who's working with me feel like they're the only person working with me, and that they have that interaction with me. Even though I have an assistant, I'd never push people off onto my assistant. I am still very much the only person that they are interacting with the entire time. So,
do you trust your assistant to have open communication when they don't really need to? I mean, instead of using you as a medium, when they need to just make a quick phone call, hey, we need whatever thing we know in real estate, hey, we need a document or something. Do you license your assistant to just make that phone call for you?
No, she might do an email. So she, does a lot. She handles all my emails for
Right.
the most part.
Yeah.
But no. I mean, when it's a phone call, it's me.
It's always you. I'd say, okay, well, I like the email because it's documented. Sometimes people don't answer the phone right away, but then, unless it's something like super urgent, like, hey, man, we got to have it right now, or we're not going to close tomorrow.
Yeah.
We need to have it next hour. But I think too many people put too many restrictions on their agent. Like, no, I don't want you communicating with my buyer or seller at all.
Yeah.
My attitude in the loan world is I got a very good processor, which is just like an assistant.
Right.
I mean, if you need something, then just, they generally work through email, because that way someone can read it, get, attach it back, whatever needs to be sent back. But I think you can be some people can be a little over controlling on, don't talk to my people. Like,
Oh, yeah.
They're professional too. What they do.
100%.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is, being a Jacksonville native, being in this area, selling all the way up an hour north into Camden County, an hour south into Palm Coast, an hour west into Live Oak, I was telling you, I think, I know this area literally like the back of my hand. And so when someone's coming to move here, especially someone maybe from out of town, and they think Jacksonville, this is this huge area. I mean, literally the largest city in the country, land-wise.
Right.
How do I know what neighborhood to live in? How do I know where I want to be? And so by having, the experience of living here for so long, I'm able to really help guide those buyers.
No, 100%. And you live in the heart of it. Mandarin, to me, is pretty much the heart of the entire Northeast Florida. I mean, if you were to stick in the middle, it would probably be somewhere in Mandarin.
Yeah.
And that's where you're at. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so
Great
much.
show.
Yeah, appreciate
Thank you.
it.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.